striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate. You should hear what keeps him up at night.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
Well, he's half right. We do need a wall. You know, to keep out gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, and Anna Navarro. What's funny, though, is that Stern actually thought that was a compliment. Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one.
Let me ask you this. What happens when the so-called king of shock gets shocked himself? On live TV? That's exactly what went down when Greg Gutfeld took aim at Howard Stern. And the craziest part? Stern didn't fire back. No clap back, no savage comeback, just silence. And trust me, in a moment like this, silence ain't strength. It's weakness. It's like getting dunked on and then just standing there pretending the rim didn't almost end your career.
But that's how Stern can call snacking with celebs at a fancy restaurant exhausting. Exhausting. Like you finished the overnight shift in a coal mine or hearing Kat talk about her pets.
Fair.
But I get it, life is tough, especially when you've been cut off from the world for 2 years in a $20 million beach house. I mean, you have no idea how tiring it is walking all the way from the wine cellar to the tennis court and back.
Now, I grew up knowing Howard Stern as that guy. The shock jock, the one who built his empire off tearing down the establishment, saying wild shit nobody else would dare, and making polite society absolutely lose their minds. He was brash, unfiltered, fearless. Whether you loved him or hated him, you couldn't ignore him. But here's the thing about kings. Stay on the throne too long and you start getting comfortable. The edge gets dull. And that's exactly what happened to Stern.
Even when I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
Instead of being the outsider, the rebel, the disruptor, he turned into the same soft Hollywood insider he used to roast. Mans went from mocking celebs to dining with them, from spitting fire into the mic to whispering softball questions like some late-night talk show host, from breaking FCC rules on air to hiding out in a $20 million beach house, sipping wine with elites. Yo, if old school Stern saw new school Stern, he wouldn't even recognize him. That's how far the falloff is. And this is where Greg Gutfeld slid in.
On his radio show, Howard Stern defended wokeism, saying it's a compliment when someone calls him woke. Listen.
If woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, well, dude.
Now, love him or hate him, Gutfeld has mastered one thing: confrontation. The dude is built for chaos. He's part political commentator, part comedian, part demolition man. He doesn't just argue, he dismantles. He doesn't scream to get attention. He slices with sarcasm, wit, and those surgical one-liners that cut way deeper than yelling ever could. So when Howard Stern, Mr. I'm woke now, call it a compliment, popped up in Gutfeld's crosshairs, oh, it wasn't gonna be pretty. And what started as just a casual mention turned into a full-blown live roast heard around the culture. Picture it, live TV, Gutfeld straight up calls Stern out. Not in some cheap shot way, but with cold precision. He reminds everyone that Stern once loved Donald Trump, mocked celebrities, and thrived off controversy. But now, Stern's cozying up to Hollywood elites, defending woke politics, and acting like the same system he used to tear down. And then Gutfeld goes further.
It is incredibly brave to take this stance after you've made $300, $400 million not being woke, right? Loving Donald Trump, exploiting the mentally ill, wearing blackface. Look at the crop of woke comments, whether it's Stern or Jimmy Kimmel, his BFF, Sarah Silverman, Joy Behar, Michael Ian Black. What do they all have in common? They wore blackface. And then they went woke. It's not a chicken or egg thing there. You know what order it came. So I call this BFR. It's blackface reparations. There's nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last. But they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists.
He points out how Stern, Jimmy Kimmel, Sarah Silverman, all those names, wore blackface back in the day, but now parade around acting like moral gatekeepers. Gutfeld calls it blackface reparations, basically saying these celebs went woke to cover their past. And the thing is, he wasn't screaming it. He was calm, confident, sharp, like a surgeon with a scalpel. Now here's the knockout punch. Howard Stern, once the fastest mouth in media, just sat there, silent, no comebacks, no savage one-liner, nothing. That silence, bruh. That was the equivalent of getting posterized on national TV and not even contesting the dunk. This wasn't just about one guy roasting another. Nah, this was bigger. This was old school versus new school rebellion. Stern came up in an era where pushing boundaries meant FCC fines, bans, and outraged sponsors. He wore it like a badge of honor. But Gutfeld, he came up in cancel culture, outrage mobs, and social media takedowns. He had to fight a whole different war, and he figured out how to thrive in it, with sarcasm, memes, and viral clips that land harder than any FCC violation. So when these two worlds collided, it wasn't just a roast. It was a generational indictment. Gutfeld exposed Stern as someone who went from king of rebellion to slave of conformity, from tearing down elites to begging them for a seat at the table. And the audience felt it. Social media lit up instantly. People clipped it, shared it, reacted to it. Not because Gutfeld said something outrageous, but because he said what fans had been thinking for years. Stern ain't that guy anymore. Now here's where it really gets interesting. Can any rebel stay a rebel forever? Like, is it inevitable that every firebrand turns into the very establishment they once fought against? Or was Stern's shift less about growth and more about survival? Because let's keep it real, this wasn't some heartfelt transformation. It looked more like calculated self-preservation. The man who once feared nothing now looks terrified of offending anyone. The dude who mocked celebs now looks desperate for their approval. And Gutfeld didn't have to exaggerate a thing. He just laid the receipts out on the table. The insult was in the comparison. Old Stern versus new Stern. Raw rebel versus polished puppet. And Stern had no answer. That's why it stung so much. Think about it. Stern built a whole career off confrontation. He was the guy who would eviscerate critics with lightning comebacks. He never ran from the smoke, but this time, he disappeared. Not physically, but mentally. It gave the impression that maybe, deep down, he knew Gutfeld was right. The king of all media went ghost. And in media, perception is reality. Gutfeld didn't need to shout, "I won." He didn't need to gloat. The internet did it for him. Thousands of tweets, clips, and reactions crowned him the winner before Stern could even think of a response. Here's the cruel part about being a legend. Your past self becomes the measuring stick. And if you don't measure up, no one is more brutal than your own fans. Howard Stern was being judged not against Gutfeld, but against himself. The guy who once mocked hypocrisy, phoniness, and Hollywood fakeness is now living in the middle of it. And that's the legacy question. Not what happened to Stern, but what did Stern become? So what did we really watch that night? Not just a roast, not just TV beef. We watched a cultural shift, a passing of the torch, or maybe a snatching of the torch, Stern, once the fearless icon, looked like a ghost of his former self. Gutfeld, the so-called jester, looked like the one actually keeping rebellion alive. And when a king gets called out by the jester and the king has no answer, that's not just funny, that's historic. So, was this the night the king of all media got dethroned? It sure felt like it. Because when a king gets called out by the court jester and the king can't come up with a single witty retort, it's not just a loss, it's a collapse. And if you didn't feel the seismic shift in the air that night, you weren't paying attention. The media world is changing, and the people who used to hold the throne, they're being replaced, one quiet defeat at a time. If there's any question left to ask, it's this: was this a shift in power? Or was it just a reminder that the king, once a revolutionary, can get eaten alive by the very media landscape he helped create? You be the judge. But don't be surprised if you find that Gutfeld's the one holding the torch now, and Stern's just left in the dust, trying to figure out how to get his crown back.